Shout out to Bring Our Q, Julius, you legend. We're going to do a joint interview, yeah? Yeah, we'll do a joint interview, Julius. Thanks for the support. You're a legend. From your girls, Raven and Ellie.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. 7-division champion Amanda Serrano posted this image with a caption that reads, "Back in the lab," to which I queried, "Cruz 2023," to which Amanda responded, "Brewing."
It's welcome news.
I anticipate that if the wheels are already in motion for Amanda Serrano's undisputed title tilt, they would presumably take place in either the first or second quarter of next year on the undercard of Jake Paul's next fight. Jake Paul's next fight could be against Tommy Fury, who was in action this past weekend on the undercard of Mayweather vs. Deji. His next opponent could be Tommy Fury or Andrew Tate, former kickboxing champion turned social media influencer Andrew Tate.
In any event, I anticipate that Serrano versus Cruz will likely take place on the undercard of Jake Paul's next fight.
I like Amanda to win that fight. I think experience-wise and stylistically, she has the edge.
She certainly has a more robust resume than Erica Cruz.
Stylistically, the boxer-puncher has the edge over the pressure fighter as they mitigate when to lay into their opponent and when to lay off, when to set traps.
When to be the boxer, when to be the puncher.
Whereas the pressure fighter is a bit more limited and a bit more predictable. Granted that pressure fighters have a way of making things rough and tumble and quite physical.
Difficult. And Erica Cruz,
That's what she is
that pressure fighter, sporting a professional record of 15 wins with 1 loss, no draws, and 3 knockouts.
Pressure fighters can be a handful. Thus, in order to defeat one, unseat one, it takes the right
combination of offense and defense, defensive responsibility and firepower, knowing when and where to use it.
Amanda Serrano, who sports a professional record of 43 wins with 2 losses, 1 draw, 30 knockouts, having never been stopped. I think she has the minerals. I think she has all the ingredients to get the job done.
And what would be this battle of the southpaws, that's right, both Amanda Serrano and Erica Cruz lead with their right hand.
In order to set up their left, Amanda Serrano, the featherweight division's reigning Unified Ring Magazine and lineal champion, has seen action 2 times already this year, 3 times last year and 2 times the year before that.
A nice steady schedule of activity, a nice steady schedule of fights. In her last fight, we saw her defeat then unbeaten Sarah Mahfoud,
reigning IBF champion at the time. Sarah Mahfoud's movement is likely the only reason she heard the final bell, because she ain't got the firepower to stand up to Amanda and trade punches with her in the pocket.
Those pivots, that movement, that's what bought her time. She lost the fight. Why?
But at minimum, she was able to take something off of Amanda Serrano's punch by staying on her toes and staying on the move.
Amanda Serrano has had a very productive 2022. The same cannot be said for Erica Cruz, who fought just once this entire year, that rematch with former unified featherweight champion of Canada, Jelena Marjanovic.
Last year was a more productive year for Erica. Last year she fought 3 times, whereas this year she only fought once. That was back in September, the second fight with Jelena Marjanovic, which went a lot like the first fight did.
One-way traffic, one-sided.
It was one-sided, just like the first one was.
I expect that opposite the ring each other, Erica and Amanda's fights will be a lot more eventful than their previous fights was. You know, Erica's fight with Jelena, her rematch, and Amanda's unification match with Sarah
Mahfoud. Boxer-puncher versus pressure fighter makes for fan-friendly fights because a boxer-puncher, most boxer-punchers, they do tend to be action fighters, and pressure fighters characteristically favor action and high-paced fights with lots of punches, lots of volume. So it'll definitely be a more entertaining fight to the eye than their previous fights were.
I'm looking forward to it. The featherweight division needs this.
Look for this next year. Takes care of featherweight news. Upstairs at super featherweight this past weekend, former WBC lightweight champion, current reigning WBC silver super featherweight champion, Delphine Persoon was in action against Roy Jones Jr.'s girl, Kerwat. And I told you that Delphine was going to clean her clock. I told you that Delphine was going to make short work of her. But what I didn't anticipate is that Delphine would be negligent enough to hit a downed opponent. That's right. The fight could have ended.
Delphine landed a whopper of a right hand that immediately stunned Kerwat. And on her way down,
Delphine Persoon made the decision that she was going to keep tagging Ikram Kerwat, keep peppering her with shots, even after her knees buckled and she's well on her way to the canvas. Delphine keeps throwing.
Delphine's no squirrely amateur, come on.
Delphine is a veteran of 51 professional contests, 51 professional bouts. I mean, you should know better.
You really should. You know what the rules are.
So she keeps smacking Ikram Kerwat upside the head as Ikram Kerwat is already down, so clearly down. And, Ikram Kerwat decided she's going to stay down there, and the fight was ruled a no contest. What could have been a highlight reel first-round knockout for Delphine ended up being a no contest. And she better thank her lucky stars that it's being ruled a no contest and not a DQ, because then she would have lost her WBC silver title.
That's right. If she would have got disqualified this weekend, like Montana Love was disqualified this weekend, she would have lost that WBC silver title and her status as WBC silver champion. Currently, she's in position to challenge Alicia Baumgartner.
Rather, the winner of Baumgartner versus Choi, which will presumably take place in either the first quarter or the second quarter of next year. Delphine Persoon is in line. She is in the queue.
She better count her lucky stars she's still in the queue, because if she would have got disqualified, the title would have went to Ikram Kerwat.
Beyond the Baumgartner versus Choi fight, Alicia Baumgartner has made it clear that she will likely move up in weight. So maybe Delphine don't get the winner of that fight, but at minimum, she may see herself becoming the WBC's super featherweight champion.
So long as she can hold it together and not make any boneheaded mistakes.
Really didn't make any goddamn sense what she did out there, but at minimum, what it communicates is that Delphine Persoon is still very dangerous. Men's lightweight news, unbeaten up-and-comer Ryan Garcia had this to say about Vasyl Lomachenko's performance against then-unbeaten Jermaine Ortiz. He said, Lomachenko may be too small for lightweight.
Well, he certainly ain't too big for lightweight.
People tend to forget why it was that Vasyl Lomachenko ended up moving up to lightweight. He wasn't getting the kind of fights that he needed, the kind of fights that he wanted at 130 pounds. It was a very political time to be in the men's super featherweight division, unifying titles. It just couldn't happen for him down there, so he moved upstairs to where guys might not be so squirrely.
Remember, that's when he was calling out Gervonta Davis, way back when they were both champions down there at 130, and we all know he never got the fight.
On October 29th, the loquacious contender at 140 pounds flicked on his television set and sat glued to his seat while non-stop action flashed before his eyes. As the 24-year-old witnessed the Ukrainian star struggle round after round, he openly wondered if going forward, the aging former champion will be in over his head against the upper echelon of the division. Loma might be too small for 135, so it seems, said Garcia on his social media account.
And I don't know that you could say that Vasyl Lomachenko is too small for lightweight. I mean, he was a unified Ring Magazine and lineal champion there.
Small, too small, too small. That's specific. Too small for what? Too small to win a belt there? He's already won belts there, more than one.
Although Lomachenko has ultimately set himself up for a titillating showdown against current undisputed kingpin Devin Haney, Garcia is attempting to iron out a few wrinkles of his own mouth-watering contest.
The whole Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia thing, they're talking about doing it in January. We'll see if that happens.
Probably
won't. Ryan Garcia's assertion that perhaps Vasyl Lomachenko is too small to continue campaigning at lightweight, this was in reference to the Jermaine Ortiz fight, you understand. And he did struggle in that fight, though I don't know that the struggle he endured had everything to do with size.
Oh, wait a minute now. That Jermaine Ortiz kid was a real big kid.
No, he was. He definitely was. But, so was Masayoshi Nakatani when Vasyl Lomachenko fought him, and he towered over Vasyl Lomachenko. He towers over most lightweights. The guy's, 6'1", 6'2", at 135 pounds? He had a lot of size on Loma, but Loma didn't struggle with him. He did, however, struggle with Jermaine Ortiz.
Well, at the risk of sounding like Captain Obvious, you know what it was. Jermaine Ortiz is a better boxer than Masayoshi Nakatani.
More than one thing can be true at the same time, Yeah, maybe Jermaine Ortiz's size and his youth and his sharpness, because he did see action earlier this year. Vasyl Lomachenko didn't. And maybe size did have its role to play, but it's not just size.
Or it wasn't, I should say, not just.
Vasyl Lomachenko hadn't fought in close to a year's time. He was shaking off ring rust in that fight against a a bigger guy and a younger guy than he is who actually had some real boxing ability, some real sharpness. So I wouldn't attribute his struggles.
I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that he's too small to campaign at a weight where he already reigned as a unified champion. It wasn't just size.
No, it's not just size. Masayoshi Nakatani had size.
Maybe, just maybe, and I'm going out on a limb here, but maybe it's because that Jermaine Ortiz kid, he's actually good.
He's actually pretty good, and I said that myself ahead of the fight, that this don't look like it's going to be easy for Vasyl Lomachenko between having to shake off ring rust and the size of Jermaine Ortiz, though the fact that he's actually a capable boxer,
That too.
this is going to create a hard night, hard fight for Vasyl Lomachenko, but that's just what the doctor ordered. That's exactly what he needed ahead of a Devin Haney fight, which, it's my understanding, is in the process of being negotiated.
That's exactly what he needed. He needed that swift kick in the ass to wake him up.
He's in shark-infested waters. He needs to be reminded of that. He just nicked it for me. He just edged it. Jermaine Ortiz, having not been in deep waters before, you understand, he faded down the stretch and Vasyl Lomachenko took over.
Vasyl Lomachenko characteristically sets a feverish pace for his fights. He's a hard man to keep up with.
And it's the pace that caught up to Jermaine Ortiz, trying to keep up with this guy. Jermaine Ortiz shows ability. He's a talented young guy. Big, too, for the weight. Strong in the clinch.
But he ain't been in deep waters like Vasyl Lomachenko's been in deep waters. Hell, the kid's never fought for an alphabet title before.
For my money, Vasyl Lomachenko edged it, and that was the adequate preparation that he needed ahead of a fight with Devin Haney, who also is a very talented young boxer, has some size on Vasyl Lomachenko, but I reiterate, and I say it all the time, Vasyl Lomachenko's not under any threat of being knocked out by Devin, because Devin, God bless him, he's not a puncher.
Devin, you know, he's a great boxer, no doubt about it, but he's been in there with a couple of chinny guys like Yuriorkis Gamboa, chinny guys like Jorge Linares, and he couldn't stop either of them.
Devin's bread and butter is his boxing, not power, not strength of arms. He's not a knockout merchant. He never was.
An interesting observation that I made during the Jermaine Ortiz fight is that Jermaine Ortiz actually has some inside game, whereas Devin Haney at his best is a long-distance fighter.
Not an inside fighter. Mid-range to inside, he's more likely to dive into a clinch and tie a guy up than trade punches with him. He's actually vulnerable in the pocket. That's where Jorge Linares clipped him with that right hand. Had him on unsteady legs for a while.
In an era of hot takes and knee-jerk reactions, one might look at Vasyl Lomachenko's performance in the Jermaine Ortiz fight and tell himself what Ryan's telling himself.
That perhaps Vasyl Lomachenko is too small to continue campaigning as a lightweight because he struggled. But it's that struggle that convinces me he got adequate preparation for Devin. He fought a younger guy who's bigger, somewhat stronger.
And that was after, 10 or 11 months of inactivity? He still secured the W. He still finished strong.
Barring illness or injury, I expect him to be that much sharper the night of the Devin Haney fight. It's going to be a hell of a fight. And finally, in men's super middleweight news, David Benavidez's father is at it again, saying Canelo will not fight David. He will vacate the WBC title.
How long are you going to ride that scooter?
Jose Benavidez Sr., father and trainer of two-time super middleweight champion David Benavidez, does not believe that Saul Canelo Alvarez will ever fight his son. The WBC recently ordered a final eliminator between Benavidez and Caleb Plant, with the winner securing a mandatory crack at Canelo, who holds the undisputed crown at 168. To be honest, Canelo will not fight David.
Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But why don't you tell him who he does plan on fighting?
Where we thought this guy might sit out till September of next year, he plans on coming back in May, and he plans on going back up there to 175 pounds to take on Dmitry Bivol for a second time.
I don't even think he should, but that's what the story is.
I think he will try to vacate that belt. He will pretend to be angry and won't take the fight with David Benavidez. I believe his fans will not be happy, and I think that will be a stain in his career. It will be an obstacle to be that great Mexican and make history.
What history is your son making?
Because Canelo Alvarez has already made history on more than one front. He's already broken the indoor attendance record here in the United States. He's already done that. He's already the first super middleweight champion in the four-belt era.
The first undisputed super middleweight champion in the four-belt era.
I think that Canelo will vacate the belt, insists Benavidez Sr.
I think before you go worrying about whether or not Canelo Alvarez is making history, you should worry about your son, because he was in this division before Canelo, yet it's Canelo making history there.
And not your son. It will never happen. Little by little, the sanctioning bodies will be stripping Canelo of his titles if he doesn't do what they order. He will be stripped of his belts. Canelo is infuriated now. The WBC ordered a mandatory eliminator. I never heard of something as ridiculous as Canelo saying he won't fight against other Mexicans. When you are a champion, you have to fight with everyone. There are fighters like Canelo that when they get to the top, they forget where they came from. He took his feet off the ground. The nationality doesn't matter. A champion has to fight with the opponents that are coming up and have done their job.
Ridiculous. You want to talk about ridiculous? Here's ridiculous. Your son lost his title outside of the ring 2 times.
Ridiculous is your son fighting only once this entire year against David Lemieux, of all people, at super middleweight, knowing full well David's best days were as a middleweight years ago.
That's ridiculous.
The WBC did what they had to do, and my respect to them. I'm grateful to make history. Canelo needs to fight David Benavidez. All the people want that fight. For him, Canelo, to close his career and remain as one of the best in the world and retire, he has to fight with David Benavidez.
You know that I actually wish he would fight David Benavidez instead of Dimitri Bivol, because I think he stands a better chance of beating David than beating Dimitri.
And where I initially thought that Canelo would sit out the first and second quarter of next year, he appears to be coming back in May, and he means to get Dimitri Bivol back in the ring, at which point, if that's what he's shooting for and that's what he really wants, the only one who could put a stop to that is Dimitri himself, because Dimitri doesn't owe him a title shot, you understand. He's not obligated to fight him for a second time, and Dimitri, his interests lie in the undisputed championship at 175 pounds, with the winner of Beterbiev versus Yard.
It seems like the only one who can stop that rematch from happening is Dimitri Bivol, because Canelo wants to run it back. He wants revenge. I'm not sure that he can get it with this guy.
Well, Jose Benavidez Sr. tries to convince the world that Canelo's terrified of his son. Here's Canelo Alvarez.
Again.
Once again, venturing north to a division his son dare not venture. He'd rather continue to wait in the kiddie pool, fighting everybody's sloppy seconds. Billy Joe Saunders' sloppy seconds. Canelo's sloppy seconds.
Pathetic.
You're just now getting around to fighting Caleb Plant. You could have fought him before Canelo knocked him out, before Canelo fought him, and you didn't do that, so you could start harping about how it's Canelo that's afraid to make history.
Pathetic.
I hate to break the news to you, but he's already made history. He's Mexico's first undisputed super middleweight champion in the four-belt era. Your son, what's he?
I'll tell you what he is. He's trying to fit into a pair of skinny jeans. That's what he is.
But a four-division undisputed champion? Well, that's what he ain't.
And it's not for lack of opportunity. It's for lack of trying. He was at that weight well before Canelo Alvarez got there.
I mean, the nerve of these guys. The audacity.
What they ought to do, they ought to start worrying about Caleb Plant, because it would be pretty fucking embarrassing if Caleb Plant, who was knocked out by Canelo, ends up beating you.
Caleb Plant would be the best name on David Benavidez's entire resume. So what does that say about David? You better focus on that guy and stop worrying about Canelo, because he's who you're fighting.